My name is Nancy Turner, and as part of the Middletown Digital History Project, I will be interviewing members of St. Francis Parish in Muncie, Indiana. Today's interviewee is Kathleen Keil, longtime member of St. Francis Parish. The interview is taking place in Mrs. Keil's home. Now, Kathy, thank you for agreeing to the interview for this project. Why don't we begin by you telling me a little bit about yourself?
Well, Nancy, we moved to Muncie. My family moved to Muncie in 48, and we went to St. Mary's, and my dad was very prominent in building St. Mary's Church, and we were in the first class of St. Mary's School, so I was in the 6th grade there. And let's see, what else might you want to know? I went to Burris, loved St. Mary's. I went away then, and then when I came home for my father's funeral in '67, went back, that's what brought me back to Muncie and to St. Mary's at that time.
So you came back to live in Muncie after your father's death.
Right. And my marriage was breaking up, and my father died. That brought me back to my mother's house, and that was a good place for me to be. And my mother helped me raise my children.
That
was
really
a good
great.
relation. Oh, it was wonderful.
But you were born here.
No, I was born in Elwood.
Oh, okay.
And then after the war, Dad, came home from the service, and he found a job. We lived with my grandparents in Elwood for a while, and then Dad found a job here in Muncie. We moved here in 48.
Could you give me just a brief impression of Muncie from your point of view, what it was when you first came here? Of course, you were a child then, but as a young person when you came back after your father's death, and Muncie and now.
Well, my false impression of Elwood was that everybody was sainted, because everybody that I knew went to the Catholic Church. And, they were all very, very good people, and I didn't understand the whole idea of the Ku Klux Klan or the other aspect of Elwood. Then we moved to Muncie, and Muncie was not a Catholic community. So there was only one other person in my school that was Catholic, in my grade that was Catholic. So it was just seemed the total opposite to me as I'm thinking about high school. So I felt like I had to defend the faith against this.
All comers.
All comers.
Now this was at Burris?
At Burris.
And this was in the early 60s?
This was I graduated from high school in '59. So it would be the late 50s. And then when I came back, really I was more involved in the college in Ball State, and I was hired at Ball State the next year in '68. So I got more involved, and that's a whole different, you don't have the same feel of the city. Once you're involved in the school, that kind of took over the coloring of my whole impression of Muncie.
Well, Ball State then, and even now, for those who are part of it, it's almost like a world in itself.
It is. And so I kind of melted into that world.
Then your life as a Catholic before you came to Muncie, you were just a child then, and so you attended Catholic schools.
Well, first grade was Catholic school in Elwood, and then when I came to Muncie, I was in Burris. And the 6th grade was when St. Mary's started its school. So I was 6th and 7th, and then I was back in Burris.
Our children did the same thing in St. Mary's to start with, and then on to Burris. So how long have you been in the parish, the St. Francis Parish, and reasons for your choice?
Well, so I came home in '67, and Father Bates was just getting things started. Seems like maybe the year before. I wasn't here, but it seems like the year before he had started working on separating the Newman Center from St. Mary's. And when my father died, people gave their contributions to the Newman Center in his name.
Mm-hmm.
So when we very first started St. Francis, there was a little plaque in honor of my father.
Mm-hmm.
And then, that got removed. And when Father John Kiefer came back, well, his name is John Kiefer too.
And he found
that plaque and he put it back up. Now it's not there anymore. So I don't know. I'll ask him about that someday. Can we put that plaque back up?
Could you talk a little bit about what part belonging to your parish plays in your life, your personal life?
Well, it was so important at that time when I first came home. I mean, I did go back to St. Mary's, but as St. Francis got formed, I wanted to be more part of the college community, and that was the focus of St. Francis. So I worked with St. Francis right from the very beginning. And we'd meet over in the bottom of Knoll Hall.
Remember those days?
Oh, yes. That was really a great time. And Father Bates and the art lunches.
You're the first person that I've met who remembers those, because they weren't on the timeline that I saw. And I thought, well, what about the art lunches? They were citywide.
They were.
Thing.
They were. And they went for a number of years, maybe till Father Bates left. I can't remember whether we were still doing that when he left.
Uh-huh.
But because I knew mathematics, now that's really ridiculous, I was the treasurer for the lunches, for the bunch of whatever, selling of the art. I haven't got the right word.
Right.
And that was, just because you know a little doesn't mean you know how to add. Actually,
well, you need somebody who could kind of keep the figures straight, so that everything is done properly.
Yes. So that was really fun. I really enjoyed those.
The ceremonies at St. Francis and the ceremonies at, I'll say at St. Mary's rather than St. Lawrence, because you didn't attend St. Lawrence. But the ceremony, the way of celebrating the Mass, the whole ambiance of the Mass, did you find it different between St. Francis and St. Mary's, and which was your preference?
Well, yes, it's so different. And started out with Father Voss.
Mm-hmm.
With Father Bates, I loved Father Bates too. And I can remember going to daily Mass in that house that he had on the Newman, on Neely.
Right.
And we had daily Mass in the revised garage with our little chapel.
Right.
And then when we started having Mass in Knoll Hall, Father Voss was frequently our celebrant, and he really was following the Vatican recommendations.
Vatican II,
and trying to bring people more into the Mass. So usually he would preach a short sermon and then say, now you talk this over with your family or the person next to you, and you would bring out how that Mass hit you right at that moment in your life. And of course that was different for everybody in the room.
Right.
Everybody was supposed to participate.
Yeah.
And everybody was looked on as having a spiritual journey that they were on. It wasn't as if we had to sit in the pew and be told how to act. It was assumed that we were all trying to find our way and that we would have something to say about that.
Right. I remember my first impression of Father Voss. regardless of people's opinions of him now, but my first impression of him was him saying Mass, and little ones sitting around the altar, little children. And I remember one time a baby crawling through and looking out at the people sitting there, and he just kind of took it with a grain of salt. It didn't seem to bother him at all. And I think that was one of my first times of saying, you know, I like it here.
Yeah, right.
And so that was, for you, that was the beginning.
Oh, yes.
What part of St. Francis appeals to you the most? I mean, what part of the way the Mass is celebrated, the music, what part really appeals the most?
I love our music. Mm-hmm. I mean, Father John is, so that's current, is just a wonderful spiritual person. Mm-hmm. And he can bring some sense to a reading that I can't make any sense out of. Mm-hmm. So I truly, truly appreciate that. But as far as moving with the Spirit, the music really picks people up, gets everyone moving in the church, and you can feel that Spirit in the church. I wanted to go back and tell you one other thing.
Sure.
When my brother Pat, when my father died, my brother Pat was dismissed. He was in the Army at that time, and he was dismissed because to come home and be with my mother. Mm-hmm. Hardship, with dismissal, or whatever they call that. Right. So Pat was part of the beginning of the Newman Center too, and he was on the board of students that helped decide that they were going to buy the house that we currently have. And I'm recalling
now that's the Esterly house.
Yeah.
It used to be the Esterly house. Then he was on the board that helped decide that. It's just, there's so many things. And early in our being together as a church, they had, folk nights. It was one day a year that people would get together and have like a coffee shop, coffee house, and they'd have some theme. And one year they had quilts. And so my mother's quilts were at this meeting. It would be, just folk music. And it was, so that was just another special time. Yeah. It was a totally different world. St. Mary's was still very formal.
Yes.
St. Francis, like you say, or like you just said, quilt night. None of us expected something like that in our church. So that appealed to you.
Mm-hmm. It seems that if we don't, it's so important to make things human, because that's what we are. And that's what St. Francis does, I think.
It pulls us together.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I have seen or heard Father John, I know I had particular trouble with a reading where it said what women were supposed to do.
Oh, yes.
I always have trouble with that. And he brought that out in the sermon by saying, I know we all feel a little uncomfortable with that. Mm-hmm. But before, it was just read and we accepted.
You were supposed to accept that, right? Yeah. I went away from your question if you wanted to ask me the question again.
No, that's fine. You just keep on with your memories, because that's really what I want. Your memories of the different pastors and the different assistants, do any stand out in your mind? You mentioned Father Voss.
Well, he's going to be the one that stands out the most, because there was a song he used to sing. Does anyone here know anything good about Jesus? And he said that at the time that Jesus was arrested, people would go around the streets. This was a common practice about a criminal. And ask that question, does anybody here know anything good about this person? Mm-hmm. Because we're getting this testimony. So then people could just respond, do you know anything good about Jesus?
Yeah. Yes. He was very charismatic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's good to hear you remember good things.
Well, I know that things did not work out well, but most people who I know, and as you should know, I was chairman of the board at the Center for Peace and Life Studies when all that happened. So I definitely know what happened, and I just so regret that that happened. But still, people who know him say he taught me how to love in a way that has stayed with me.
And it was more like, don't do as I do, do as I suggest you do.
Right.
And I don't say don't tell you to do, because he never told us,
No.
he suggested.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Your memories of Father Bates.
Oh, so Father Bates, he was a scholar. So he could help you in the understanding of things and exploring the history of the church or the history that was within the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So he was wonderful in that way, and a gentleman.
Yes. And the church prospered under him.
Yes. So he was a wonderful leader for our community.
And not only the Catholic community, he reached out to the whole city.
Yes.
And that was a new concept back in the 60s.
And that was something that the art branch really could do.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one way that he could get other kinds of people into our church and see that we weren't doing anything terribly awful in there.
Or odd. Right. Yes, that was probably his best role while he was pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Any other memories of any other pastors or any other assistants you do? Of course, you do mention Father John Kiefer, who is our current pastor.
Oh, yes. I mean, I could say that I love Father John, but he's also my cousin, so.
Oh, I didn't realize that. He really is your cousin.
He really is my cousin. So, his grandfather and my grandfather are brothers.
I wasn't aware of that.
Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you a funny story. One time when Ben, my youngest son, was very little, he used the word ambiguous. And he was like in second grade or something. And we knew he could not know what that word meant. So we said, well, what's that mean? And he said, well, John Kiefer. Because that's my dad's name, my brother's name, Father John's name, his grandfather's name.
We don't need any more John. Well, what are your memories of him? Of course, you say as you said, he's your cousin, but your memories of him as a spiritual leader.
Well, he definitely is a spiritual leader. There's something about him that he can turn he can pick up the spiritual meaning of something. The other day I was supposed to be leading this little prayer group for Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And I had planned out some things, but I knew they weren't perfect and they didn't exactly flow to one another. And so like 2 minutes before we were together, I let him see what I was doing. And he just picked it up. It moved so smoothly. You would have thought that we had worked on it for a long time. Because he can understand where you are, even though he could understand where I was, even though I hadn't gotten that down there.
I also notice how he will use or work humor into his into the most serious subject, because he'll be talking and then all of a sudden, or he'll be speaking to all of us, and then all of a sudden he'll give us an aside that kind of breaks the ice, and that's good. We need that.
Oh, I was going to mention too, Father Fosselman, who was here way back. He was here in the 40s.
We can look at our timeline here, and it says Father Fosselman was here from 1942 to 1945.
And served as the Newman Club chaplain. Well, so he's another cousin. So he's on my mother's side.
No wonder you go to St. Francis.
And he just had wonderful memories of St. Mary's and being in the Newman Center, and of Catherine Holden and Kathleen Keil, who really were the backbone of the Newman Center at that time.
And founded it.
Yeah. Yes, yes. So that was wonderful to listen to the older people talk about early days of the Newman Center and the whole idea of being a service to the college students.
Which was a new concept for Muncie.
Yes.
Could you share some of your memories of both Kathleen Keil and Catherine Holden?
Well, because they are the memories of a little child, so they're memories of good older women. If you understand what that means.
Right. You liked them, but and you were respectful to them.
Right.
But you really weren't
knowing
friends.
Yeah. No.
I understand that. Any other memories of either pastors or assistants, or any other memories of occasions that stood out in your mind about St. Francis?
Well, there's, I know I could speak about different pastors or different assistants, but I'll stick to just occasions. At the beginning, when we left Knoll Hall and we had the house, but before we had built the church, then we'd meet for Sunday Mass, and we'd break up and we'd go, what was the FEP? So we'd break up into groups and go in. Your group would meet in the living room, and somebody else's group would meet in the dining room. And again, we had that idea of pulling out of ourselves what this reading meant.
And there was a whole new kind of church for the people from St. Lawrence and St. Mary's, and that's probably what drew a lot of them to St. Francis.
Right.
Was that ability to interact, and it seems that most of the pastors felt that way at St. Francis.
Yes.
Do you think there were some pastors who were more, besides Father Bates, but some pastors or assistants who were more successful in that role than others?
Brother Holman, he seemed to be very successful in that, and bringing you back to the true meaning of something.
Anyone that stood out in your mind as not able to, wouldn't exactly fit into the mold of what St. Francis was trying to do?
Well, yes, but maybe I don't want to talk about it.
I think that's just fine. I was trying to think of an easy way.
I won't say the pastor's name, but one time somebody brought to our church
yeah, that's a good idea.
A priest, who was saying that Catholics needed to have more children because other people were having, we were going to be overrun by these other religions, and we should be out there having more and more children. And I didn't think that was the true spirit.
Did he talk to any of the ladies who were going to have these multiple children? And speaking of children, if you had a choice of schools for your child when your boys were little, Catholic or public, which would you take and why?
Oh, okay. Well, my oldest son went to kindergarten at St. Mary's. Then I went over to the first grade to kind of look in on them before we went into first grade. And everybody had these little counters on their desk. And every person in the room was saying 3 counters plus 5 counters, and then you could count up to 8. And I didn't think that was going to be very helpful. I mean, I would have loved the emphasis on religion for my children, but intellectually I thought that they needed something else. So we didn't continue at St. Mary's.
Of course, any child who has come through a Catholic school, or you always get a bunch of Catholic kids or Catholic adults together.
Yes.
They can all tell war stories. But your choice was the public school.
Yes. So we did kindergarten, and then we went over to birth.
And for you, the intellectual things that would happen for them and
intellectual challenge
would be better.
Was very important. And since those two older children are not in the church today, you know, they're nowhere kind of. Maybe it was the wrong decision, but that was the decision I made at that time.
Well, I really don't think that makes a difference, because I think a child will find their own way, because 7 of our 8 went through Catholic school, and they each had to go their own way, and some did, some didn't. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, I think you have to make that decision according to your own thing.
Yeah.
Right. Did you, at any time in your life, especially in your adult life, experience any overt or covert anti-Catholic attitudes and or practices?
Well, I'm thinking of the boy that I was dating in high school. Mm-hmm. Well, he was a Protestant, and his parents didn't really approve of me. Then years later, I met his parents, because of course we were both here in Muncie, and they said, "Oh, if we had, only known where he was going, and of course it would have been so good to have been with you instead of the family." So they did not approve of me at the time that we were in high school, but they changed their mind at least somewhat later.
I remember one of the young men that I knew in high school, and one day my rosary beads dropped out of my pocket, and he looked at it like it was a snake.
Right,
and
right.
He changed his whole opinion.
Right, right.
But these parents decided that you were probably a better bet.
Right, than what happened to it.
So, anything else? Anything that you noticed at the university? Any time that you ran into any kind of anti-Catholic attitude?
I really think that any prejudicial attitude really came from my being a woman rather than from my religion. But things can get mixed up there. I don't know really how that works.
Of course, the Klan influence in the 20s carried over to the 30s and maybe to the 40s, but after the war, I think it certainly eased a lot.
Right.
And most everyone, it has more of the attitude, let's live, we're together,
right.
Let's live together.
Right.
In your view, what's the future of St. Francis Parish?
As we look and we see that there are fewer and fewer priests, it's really hard to know. I hope that we can stay together as a parish. I think that it's good for the students to have someone whose focus is themselves. They come, they're lost in a big university, and I really feel like they can get lost very, very easily. So I think it's good for us to have that as a mission, and I hope that we can stay. But it's really hard to know.
Do you think it will help, or would help, if we could have women priests?
Okay, the answer is yes. Because I don't really see that as a law that is very important, that men should be the ministers and not women. Jesus himself was a man, and since he was on the road, it was probably better that his most trusted companions were men. That might have been a source of scandal for people if it hadn't been that way.
But weren't there a group of women that usually followed?
And there were a group of women that banded together, and I believe that there was this group of women who were always there to help this group of men.
And not only to feed them and wash the clothes, but to serve
To minister.
Yeah, spiritual equals.
Yes,
too.
yes.
Right. So for you, with the shortage of priests, you would have no objection to a woman.
No, I wouldn't. I really wouldn't.
Or else having the priestly duties parceled out.
Well, and
to
we could
lay
have
people.
deacons.
Yeah.
We could really have deacons that were both men and women. That would be a step that would acknowledge women's contributions. It really would.
What about marriage for priests? Do you feel that is part of the future?
No, but Father Bob Husselman, who we talked about a minute ago, he always used to say, well, it's all right with me, but just as long as I don't have to get married.
that this isn't a forced thing.
I do see a good thing has happened in our town, that Father John Kiefer has gone over to St. Mary's and is bringing those two parishes together where there used to be a real animosity.
Oh, almost an enmity.
And enmity. So if you could think, my mother was still in St. Mary's Parish and, was very closely related to, Vivian's here was her very, very good friend. So they could hardly see that I was going to Mass. And I don't feel that kind of, certainly there will be a remnant of that.
And there will be some who will cling to the old ways.
Right. But it feels like that we're bridging a gap, and that really feels good. That people will not be opposed to each other.
I felt that about, when I first came to St. Francis, I felt that my friends from St. Mary's looked at me kind of askance, like, what are you doing? And the fact that we're all Catholic.
Right.
And we can reach out to each other. We have different ways of celebrating, but it's the same Mass.
Right.
And so...
And our sacraments are still valid.
Right. And so we can all approach in different ways. Right. Any events of St. Francis, any other things that you'd like to talk about, things you wish I had asked you so you could include?
No, I think I got to tell you the main stories that I had thought about. It's just, to me, it's just such a place of celebration. So it doesn't mean you can't be sad or, you can't bring things that are troublesome there. It's just that it's a place that they'll be lifted up.
Yeah. I look around the parish on Sunday morning, or look around the community, and I think that's what it is for me. It's community. And I think these are my people.
Right. Oh, I think the very same thing. Yes.
And whether I always agree strictly with the rules, but in my spirit, these are my people. Well, Kathy, thank you.
Oh,
thank you for letting me come into your home.
Yes, this was great.
And we are glad to get your memories, because your father and mother were Catholics and in the Muncie community, and now you and your sons, and of course I knew your oldest son. I was his Cub Scout mom.
You sure were.
But anyway, I do thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nancy.